You're listening to Best Forevers, a podcast for kindred spirits, a podcast that encourages you to love more on your friends and to further consider the issues that plague friendships. I'm Alysa Lucas, and this is the time of year that I need to watch myself with the purchasing of school supplies because I will overspend. I love myself some school supplies. I mean, there's literally no joy in seeing school supplies back in Target in early July. But with the new academic year upon us, there's always this certain energy and excitement that's in the air. I love this time of year. Last week, I was driving down Mission Street, which is the main street in Mount Pleasant, and I was thinking about how in a few days, students be arriving to start their journey at Central Michigan University. I can imagine how exciting it is to think about all that's to come for students. But much like all life transitions, there can be a lot of uncertainties about arriving to college. Certainly the issue I'm most concerned with is students making meaningful connections on campus and being happy, healthy, and safe. So as the new school year begins, I wanted to chat with my friend Ellen about making friends and making the most of one's college experience. If you're heading to college, know someone who is heading to college, or experiencing any life transition, there's something in this episode for you. Here is Ellen and I. Hi, Ellen.
Hi.
So can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I am an assistant director in the Sarah R. Opperman Leadership Institute here at CMU. My job is kind of behind the scenes. I do a lot of assessment work and some stuff cross-campus collaboration work. And then this year I actually get to advise a program and a graduate student. So that's exciting. But a lot of what I get to do is measure if we're actually doing leadership education, which that's what we should be doing. Are we actually teaching anything? The good answer is we are. So that's exciting. Way to go, CMU. But we get to do a lot of different programs. We have a lot of them that are talking specifically to our incoming new students. And so I'm excited to talk about all these new things that we know about friendships and students who are coming into college and what that means.
Well, with the whole new school year, which I always find to be very exciting. And then as people who are on campus, that work on campus, it's like, summer is over. So it's real.
Ouch.
I know. When I pulled into work today and the band was there, I was like,
I know.
Summer's over.
Yeah, we're fighting for parking spots already. It's getting ugly. It's going to be bad.
But it's also an exciting time, right?
It really is.
And so I'm trying to think of what it was like for me. We're going to talk a little bit about transitioning to college today and having friendships and all the great programs that exist at Central and just some of the things for people to think about as they're returning to school. But do you remember what it was like for teenage Ellen?
Oh my gosh,
transitioning to college? What was that like?
Yeah, it's so funny. I did not go to undergrad at CMU, and a lot of CMUers went to CMU.
I did not either. I went to Michigan State.
Yay, outsiders.
Outsiders. Who are now insiders.
Yes, who are now insiders. It's true. But I went to the University of Arkansas. Yay. Woo pig suey. Said I wouldn't say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. I have to. It just comes after it. And like a lot of my peers there, and not unlike students here at CMU, I came from a really rural place. So Arkansas, pretty rural in general, but there's a lot of rural students who end up at CMU too. And I had no idea how to make friends beyond the ones that I had known literally my whole life, like K through 12. And the funny thing is, I brought a roommate with me from home, like a lot of students try to do. They want to live with somebody they know. It helps ease that transition, but it really didn't actually help because she was a crutch. I mean, I still love you, Lindsay, but it was easy to just hang out with Lindsay instead of getting out and meeting new students. But I used clubs and organizations as a way to really dig into my college experience. And I don't know, how was yours? Because you went to a community college first.
Yes, I went to Lansing Community College, which is the same town I grew up in. So I went to Sexton High School in Lansing, Michigan, and then I went to Lansing Community College. And so the kid, when I would walk into Sexton in the morning, and the kid who was in charge of collecting attendance sheets was standing in the hallway at Sexton. When I walked into Lansing Community College, he was standing in the hallway there too. And I had a moment where I stepped outside and was like, is this LCC or am I still at Sexton? So a lot of the students I went to school with in high school, or who I worked with, because I worked with a bunch of high school students at a movie theater in Lansing, that they were all there. So in a way, it's like just moving the high school to a little bit bigger place where there's other people from surrounding schools. And so I would say, I was there for 4 years. And, at community college, I didn't get involved in anything. I don't even know what there was to be involved with, to be perfectly honest. I spent a lot of time working at the movie theater. I had great friendships from there that I developed when I was in high school. And so I would say that high school in a way was just extended for me until I transferred to Michigan State 4 years later. And so I transferred to Michigan State, took a class during the summer to sort of ease into it. And I didn't really know anyone. And it was a little intimidating to be at this huge school, even though my mom worked there and I had been around it almost my entire life. Yeah. It's finally, I'm, in the classes. In my first semester, I was in a class of 600 people. Yeah. Whoa. Which was probably how many times bigger than your graduating high school class?
My high school class graduated with 78 people.
Yeah. So
my whole high school was less than 400 students.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had those moments too, where I looked around at our new student, first year student pep rally. Yeah. And it was over 1,000 people in this like outdoor amphitheater. And I was like, this is more people than my whole K-12 high school experience. And so, it's a little overwhelming to step on a college and then try to figure out how do I make a friend and who is going to be a friend?
And I think your experience, my experience was similar where I didn't feel like I necessarily needed to make new friends.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because I have my same friends who Kate went to LCC too, and she's my best friend who was on episode 1 and some other episodes and that sort of thing. And we're still friends today. But I also feel like we probably made a few friends or added, but I felt like it was just a continuation. And then when she went to Michigan State before I did, and she was in the art program, she started making friends there. And then when I transferred over into my communication classes, I started making friends in the classes, but then I was also part of the Undergraduate Communication Association. Yep. And I ended up running to be treasurer, and I don't think anyone ran against me, so I won.
Yeah, uncontested winner.
That's the best, isn't it? And so I would say the 2 years I was at Michigan State, that's how I developed friends, was in classes and through clubs.
Yep.
So, but CMU has a program that helps with the transition. And so, like I said, we didn't do much probably to try to make friends. We could have probably had a different experience if we would have branched out a little bit.
Yeah. If we had not gotten our idea of college from movies and perhaps actually paid attention to what was happening around us, we might have been a little more successful. Now, I think ultimately both of us ended up successful.
Okay, I think.
But it would have been less rocky transition if we had done some of the things that CMU was lucky to offer. So one of the things that we do, which is fairly unique across the country, is we offer a new student leadership program. Mm-hmm. It's a 4-day conference. It's called Leadership Safari. We're in our 21st year.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. We have over 20,000 alumni of the program now, which is incredible. We have 300 undergraduate student leaders, which is just a huge staff. I mean, a 300 student program is big enough, but each year we have between 1,800 and 2,000 students who participate.
Wow.
If you think about it, it's really a conference. They really get to meet, and they're broken up into groups, which we have affectionately given animal names.
Because it's
a safari. and our logo's like a toucan. I mean, it's super fun. And students really get an opportunity to learn about themselves, do some identity development work, because we know if you're going to be a leader, you have to do the self-work first. And so they get to form healthy relationships. They get to do some things within small groups, because we know that that's really where some of these friendships start, is in these groups. And then they learn all sorts of leadership theory and do different speakers, different activities. And some are fun. Some are just for fun, because students need that too.
Yeah, you need the social aspect of it. Yeah, of course.
But a lot of it has a lot of educational theory backing it. And we really do try to move students through a really specific curriculum in order for them to go from point A, which is no knowledge of how to be a leader on campus, to point B, which we hope is how to change the world. We're trying.
In 4 days.
In 4 days, we're going to change the world. But no, it's really great. And it's geared at students, because we know for college students to make friends, they need 2 things. They need time and environment. And we've got the environment because they're all in the same space, but then we just have to give them time to do that.
Yeah.
So I mentioned our 300 student leaders. They get a rigorous training on
I actually participated in training this year. The Rangers go Rangers.
So good. Yeah, Ranger staff. Shout out to you. They're our returners. They're incredible. A really special among special student group. Yeah. But all of our safari guides get a group of about 10 students, some a little more, some a little less. And they are given instructions on how to facilitate small group activities, really developing those conversations. And the thing we know that leads to the greatest student leadership efficacy. So like who's going to be the most impactful, who's going to do it the best, is having conversations about and across difference. And so if you can teach students that they have to have those conversations, they don't always just happen naturally. You have to put yourself in those positions. It's really easy to ignore that or stay away from it, but that's what we know will generate these social change ideas and really get them to be leaders. So that's what they're trained to do, which is pretty cool. And then our 2,000 students can do that, which is over 70% of our incoming class this year, which means we're one of the highest percentage of new student programs across the country who get to do a leadership experience.
Yeah, and it's as someone who's like, okay, we said we were outsiders because we didn't go to Central, but I'm also an outsider because I'm not in the Leadership Institute.
I mean, you are.
I mean, I feel like, yes, I feel like I have a special spot in everyone's heart, and I appreciate that. But I also have participated in leadership programs on campus and off campus, and have many of the students who are part of the Leadership Institute in my classes and so on and so forth. But one of the things that I was struck by was when I arrived on campus 5 years ago for new faculty orientation, that we had sort of a social function. Same idea, right?
Same idea.
We go through things that we need to know, things that we need to learn about campus, so on and so forth. And then we have a function with the president and, food and things like that.
Notable dignitaries.
Exactly.
Fancy hors d'oeuvres. Yes.
Hors d'oeuvres were had. Exactly. And so there's a space on campus that holds the football field, the indoor track, the offices for athletics, what we call the Student Activity Center, where the students work out and take classes and things like that. And then it's connected to McGurk, which is the arena for basketball, wrestling, gymnastics, so on and so forth. Did I say volleyball?
If you didn't, they're there too.
They're there too.
Go volleyball.
Go volleyball. I love volleyball. So, I sat on the bench for one season in high school, so I have a special place in my heart.
Basically an athlete.
Exactly.
That's more than I
was
did.
A cheerleader.
That's more than I did. I did 0 of those things. So you're an athlete in my book. Someone let you be on a team. No one let me be on a team.
Oh,
I didn't.
You can be on my team
it's
now.
Fine. Oh, good. Okay.
We won't play
trivia
volleyball.
team.
Yeah, trivia team.
Okay,
yes,
great.
Exactly. I was like, I don't have any energy to play volleyball. But so this whole space is connected together, and the faculty function was in the open space in the arena, like it's a glassed in area and that sort of thing. And then when I pulled into the parking lot, there was at least over 1,000 students. You're telling me it's probably closer to 2,000. Yeah. And I was like, said to one of the people that I met at training, I was like, what is going on? And they're like, oh, it's, this introductory program for incoming students where they get acclimated to the university and learn about leadership and make all these connections. And I was like, this is one of the most amazing things I've ever heard of. I sat in the parking lot and just watched them as they were waiting to get in, and maybe people thought that was creepy, but I was just really interested and fascinating by how peer communication and how you develop friendships on campus as you're coming into the new year. And now that I am here, I can participate in some of those things. I participated in training this year, but then also every year, part of the program, there's a night where the students have a pizza night with professors and professionals. And so they can ask questions and things like that. And I've done that the last 4 years.
Champion.
Thank
you.
Team Ducks, Team Frogs, Team Raptors. You're going to have to talk to me about when I'm going to see a raptor on a safari, but
it's better than Team Dung Beetle.
I wore my Jurassic Park shirt, so I was very excited.
Incredible.
And then this year I'll be Anaconda.
Ooh, fun. I'm with Team Lynx this year, so excited about that.
We got some saucy teams.
Yeah, and it's really, we know from educational research that students who have at least one connection on campus with someone who could fit that mentor profile, so someone who's a little older than them, maybe as a staff member or a faculty member, they're 60% more likely to graduate. So
that's amazing.
It's really,
that is an amazing statistic.
It's incredible. And so we know we have to make those opportunities happen. And so Safari staff have been really intentional about making that opportunity. And we get, I think, over 100, it might be more than that, people who volunteer every year to come fill that space for students because they know that it's critical for their retention at the institution and also just in their development. Yeah. So we're thankful for faculty like Dr. Lucas who come year after year and have a great time. It's fun too.
It's super fun. I always take my business cards and I always write one message, a different message on the back. So they'll get something like fire up forever, you know, just like some cheer or some like advice for the first semester. And so I always tell them, you can always come to my office or you can email me, and you might just have to say, hey, I'm Lori from
your Safari group.
Your Safari group. Because I do have other students that, you know, that I've just met through, you know, classes starting and that sort of thing. But I'm always here. And I think, you know, that is not something that ever happened at any of the schools that I have been at.
No, and it's really intimidating for students who see this power differential. Like, you know, you've got a PhD, you're a, you know, doctor somebody or whatever. It seems really scary to be like, I just have a question. I need to ask. I don't even know where to start. But it's year after year, we ask students to nominate faculty to come back and serve in this role. And Dr. Lucas is always like the most mentioned name. So just putting that out there. But it's that sort of work that really makes these mentorships happen. And even if it's just knowing a name and seeing a face and having a friendly sort of person that you can hopefully stop by an office hour or ask a question of is really, really key.
Well, and I also give them my Twitter. You know, I'm at Dr. Alysa Lucas. I've had people message me on Twitter. And so just as many venues as I can see, because the thing about it is there's so much going on. We know that there are statistics about, you know, high school students coming in with depression and anxiety, and that students are more likely to seek out counseling and things like that. Just think of it, you take that away and you just have this huge life transition. You have freedom for the first time.
For the first time. Yeah, for most of our students, this is the first time they've been away from their family for any extended period of time. And many of them have never even had to share a room. So having to have 1, 2, or 3 roommates is a totally new thing.
Eating in the calf where I never did that because I never lived in residence halls. Because I went to Lansing Community College, I lived at home. Then I moved in with Kate, and then when I transferred, I had an apartment, so I never had the residence hall experience. So the only time I've ever eaten in a cafeteria was at camps or when we both did the leadership facilitation, which is another leadership program. And so that was my residence hall experience for a week. And I had it when I was 39.
And we lived across the hall from each other, so that was fun. Loved it. Let's go back. Love leadership.
Can I talk about the food at that cafeteria at Albion College? I'm going to give them a shout out.
Big props. That's one of the best college cafeterias I've ever seen.
I think I gained like 15 pounds, and I'm okay with it.
It was so good and inclusive. They had vegan options every meal. I mean, anyway, I won't wax poetic
about that.
But it was so good, and it is. And we're very lucky to be on a campus that cares about that. That too, and we know too that like 22%. It's something like you have a 22% higher chance of graduating if you live on campus. But we know that not every student also gets that opportunity. So you have to be really specific about, especially if you're an off-campus student, about making those connections and finding those friendships, because it's not going to happen if you don't put yourself out there a little bit.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. There's so much going on. You have first-year students coming in, first time for freedom, eating in a new place, living with people, maybe never having that experience of having roommates before. You add in academics, but you're also, as a person, we are humans with specific human needs, and we are social creatures who need attention and affection and connection. And one of the primary needs is to feel included by other people. And so that might be one of the primary things students are looking for when they come here. And it might not just be first year students. I'm thinking as myself as a transfer student, that you come in and people have already developed those relationships. And so, you have to put yourself out there. And so, you know, what are some of the things that you would say are important to know sort of about this transition or about making connections on campus?
Yeah, a couple things. So one, look around when you get on campus, because you feel really alone.
Yes.
But so does everyone else. And so it's really normal to feel that way. You're going to feel like, you know, and you look at your Instagram feed or your Facebook feed and you're like, everybody else is having such a great time. And I don't feel like I fit anywhere yet. And so it's just, you have to be really careful not to let yourself go in that spiral, because everybody feels alone or lonely in that moment.
So one of the things that this makes me think is like, what can college students do as they transition into college or the transfer in? What are some of the things they can do to put themselves out there to make these connections? So I found this article on psychologytoday.com, and it's written by Dr. Deborah J. Cohen. And it's The Lonely College Student, a professor's advice for students and parents. And so here's some of the advice that she gives in this article. the first thing is recognize that these thoughts are very typical and very normal.
Super normal.
Yes.
Everybody feels lonely at the beginning of the school year.
Or just at different points in our life, we'll feel lonely.
Yep.
And just because we feel lonely, it's not because we're alone. Like, they're two different things, right? We can thank Kelly Clarkson to letting us know that just because we're alone doesn't mean we're lonely, that we can feel lonely when we have romantic partners and friends and things like that. But it's about how we can make connections to grow, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're never really as alone as you think you are. There are people around. There are professors on campus. There are student affairs professionals on campus. You've got friends next door. Get outside your room and say hi.
Get out there and say hi. Which is, and one of the things is, it's not going to happen right away. So that's one of the things I observe sometimes is that I think people will immediately be like, we're best friends, or, just something like that, because they're trying to find their footing on campus or in a new situation. And so one of the things from the article is it can take a while for a new place to feel like a home.
It really can. And you have to kind of know where you're going, not feel lost on campus, not wander into the wrong building. And then also it just takes some repeated contact. Like, you may sync up with your BFF as your roommate, but you may not. And that's okay. It's just going to take a little bit of time to have enough time to fill out your friendship and feel out where you're going to go.
And what were you talking about before?
Oh, yeah. So we know that the way in which you make friends in your first semester or later semesters, but you can predict how good the friendship will be at the end of the first 3 months. Yeah. So the friendships that you make in that first semester are really crucial because they predict the success of that friendship moving forward. Yeah. So the first 3 months of any friendship are really going to be the predictor. Yeah. And so, having repeated contact and then increasing the depth of that contact. So it's not that you're just talking about soccer, it's that you're also playing soccer together, and maybe you're having a dinner and talking about soccer there too. Yeah. And then maybe it evolves into more frequent hanging out or doing other things beyond just your limited soccer sort of experience. Yeah. So,
and the other thing is, if you meet someone and that's the only thing you talk about, that's a great connection.
And that's what we call an acquaintance, and those are great to have. Those are networking opportunities, and those are good. Even if your relationship is limited to one topic, make lots of those, and that's super helpful later down the road when you're trying to make a connection for somebody else who's looking for a friend, or maybe you just want to chat about that. Somebody you can go holler at.
And if it becomes something that's more than acquaintance, it's one of the things that we talk about in communication. There's a theory called social penetration theory by Opperman and Taylor, and they talk about sort of what's the breadth and depth of the conversations. Breadth being how many topics do you discuss? Yep. It wouldn't be a lot of breadth if it's only soccer, but if you talk about, as I've heard students say, everything and anything and anything and everything in between, then that's a lot of breadth. Depth is, are you talking at a surface level, just like basic stuff that people can pick up, that they can tell your favorite soccer team is Manchester United because you got the scarf on your wall in your residence hall, for example, or you're wearing a shirt, or maybe you get together and you watch a soccer game, and so you talk a little bit more and you get to know each other about you playing soccer and this, that, the other thing. And then maybe you get a little bit deeper and you talk about what you actually want to do. I started playing soccer when I was a kid, and I had this really great experience. And now, I want to participate in the intramural team, and I'm hoping with my major that I'll be able to do this job. You can see that those are very different conversations that people are having. And so the more you self-disclose, the closer that you're likely to get, according to this theory.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really cool for a new student who lives on campus, it's a lot easier to start having those conversations because you've got the time. Yeah. And I hear college students all the time talk about how busy they are, but this is the most free time you're ever going to have in your life.
It might not feel like it.
It might not. It doesn't. I didn't feel like that. And I was in every club, and I was most involved RSO member. I have the trophy. But I had more time then as I do later, certainly than I have now. And so take advantage and use those artifacts like the soccer scarf hanging on your wall. Notice those things about other people. What t-shirt are they wearing? And that's a great conversation starter. If you're like me and you're from somewhere small and you didn't really ever have to make new friends, except maybe at a camp or something over the summer, it's really great to, on campus, notice what people do and ask them about it. It's a really great combo starter.
Well, here's the other thing. People like to talk about themselves.
They love it. They love it. I love it. Let's be real.
And so if you are someone who's I'm not really sure what to say, it could just be the basic college conversation that we talk about in the classroom is, what's your name, where you're from, what's your major? And so that'll be something that'll be really common. But then you might even be able to move further and say, oh, you're from this city. What's your favorite part about that city? I've never been there. Or, I've been to that city. This is, I love this part of it. It might be a way to have the conversation. So I always think about having a few questions.
Why did you pick CMU or institution where you are?
Yes.
Why did you choose this place as a great conversation starter? Because guess what? You all picked it. And so it might be just, I was close to it. It's where I grew up. Yeah. Or it might be, my family has always gone here.
Yes.
Or I love the Chippewas, or whatever the answer is. It'll give you some insight into who they are and what their priorities are. And you can keep asking questions from there.
Yeah. And so it's just, you have one question ready and let it flow. Mm-hmm. All right, back to the article. It says that, and I know Ellen is going to love this one, keep your door open when you are in your room so people can stop in, say hi, and hang out.
I love it. I mean, I get this question a lot. I've been working in higher ed for over a decade now. And so I have cousins and friends who've gone to college in that time. And they always say, hey, what should I go buy at the store to make this successful? Okay.
Sorry,
that's the most professor answer possible is to buy a stapler. And I will second it.
Sorry, I just had to get that in there.
But number one is a doorstop. Go get a doorstop. Even just the cheapy plastic kind, they're like $1. It's such a great investment in your community. And to buy one for another person.
Oh, that's
Get
awesome.
it in a pack of two and be like, hey, share this with you. Your across the hall neighbor needs one too. So you always have some doors open to talk to. And I think that's one of my best pieces of advice because it really does create that community and it will help you find new people.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really, it's one of those things like people are going to be less likely to knock on a door. Like a door is not, closed is not welcoming, right? Or it says someone's busy or they're sleeping or they're changing or, studying or something like that. But if you're just hanging out and people walk by, what are you up to? Or they might hear a song or a video game or, something like that. And they'll be like, oh, hey, or people might just say hi and stop in. And I actually had some friends on in a previous episode that's how they would talk in each other's doorway in college. And that's how they became friends. So it's a great way to do it. And I have that same policy as a professor. If my door is open, you can come in.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if it's office hours or not. But if it's closed, that probably means I'm in a meeting or I have something that I need to get done. But my door is pretty much always open. And so that is generally people understand what an open door means.
Yeah. And it's a great practice to get into. And I think it absolutely contributed to my success in college. And I think it'll contribute to others. Yeah. And I just love when people do it because you invite folks in. And even if you're just sitting in your room scrolling through Insta for the 100th time that day, you can scroll through Insta with your door open. So try it out.
Give it a whirl. Some of the other pieces of advice are spend as little time in your room as possible other than to sleep. So it's like getting out there. Yeah. There might be common spaces in the buildings or on campus, going to whatever your campus's union is.
Yeah. Study in the library. Yeah. Do it somewhere else. You don't have to sit on your bed. It's not the most comfortable or best place to study. Yeah. Even if you're at your desk, that's better than on your bed because you're going to fall asleep on your bed. Use your bed for sleeping and not much else. And get out and find the flyers in your common areas, your entryways, figure out what's happening on campus. If there's an event that night, try out something new, go to a comedian, go see a movie, but then join those clubs, try those club meetings. That's where you're going to find people with similar interests to you. You don't have to stay in every club, but you should at least try some new ones. Yeah. That's where I found a lot of my friends and figured out what my interests were and what my passions were. And it really helped guide me into the profession that I'm doing. I became an RA. I did all this fun stuff with orientation leaders. And it really is where you're going to find your people is in these clubs with similar interests.
Yeah, and you're not going to be able to figure that out from your bed.
Yeah, they're not going to come to you.
Sadly.
The meeting is not in Mills Hall, whatever. It's where you got to get out and have dinner somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's what the next piece is like attend evening and weekend events that the school sponsors, lecture series, dance performances, musicals. I didn't realize like Central Michigan University, like there's a organization called the Program Board that's run by students and they bring in a lot of the people, comedians, magicians,
all of that. And take advantage because also you don't have to pay for a lot of those performances or they're heavily discounted. Yeah. And that's not true when you're a grown up. You got to pay full ticket price.
Full price, an adult price. When I go to, for example, the movie theater, are you a student? Do I look like a student? They're like,
that
yeah, and I'll be
discount.
like, then, wink, wink, hit the discount price. I do have a central ID.
Right?
It says faculty, but
if my kid is in kindergarten, does that count? But yeah, you have to take advantage of all that culture that's on campus and try new things too. Don't just go to the things you know you're going to like, although go to those too, but try something else on. I had never really been to a live theater performance until I went to college, and my peers were the ones doing the acting, and it was incredible. I went to a tiny high school. We didn't have a drama program. And so to be able to see live theater for the first time was just completely eye-opening. It's where I found my love for live comedy is through on-campus comedians. So it really, really are at a time where you have time to try these things out. So do it.
It's amazing because I don't remember looking for any of this stuff when I was at LCC for sure. And then at Michigan State, I pretty much did the Undergraduate Communication Association. And then when I was a graduate student at Penn State, I got to see so many concerts and athletic events for $5. And a lot of those things might be free at a school like Central, or you can check out what your school offers. And like you said, they might be discounted. But being able to see so many sporting events, and we have really great teams here at Central, like the women's basketball team went all the way to the Sweet 16 this past year. Fire up, Chips. Yeah, and I had Coach Guevara on talking about Team 50 earlier.
She's the best.
Yeah, she's great. That episode's called All In if you're interested in hearing from Sue Guevara, which
and also, your community is broad. Lots of international students have their own clubs. They do culture nights.
I've been to several. It's super interesting.
So don't forget about the things that are offered by student organizations that are of a group you wouldn't necessarily join, but you're interested in learning more about.
And, one of the things I also noticed about Central that, maybe I didn't notice either just didn't look for it when I was a student or just didn't know about it as a faculty member, for example, but there's a lot of alternative breaks and volunteering and other things in which so it seems like if you're into sports, there's intramural teams and there's sporting events you can go to. If you're into live, there's theater, there's the improv, the trapdoor improv comedy, there's, what do you call it? A cappella groups. There's so many different things that can sort of fit anyone's fancy. You can figure out what you're interested in, or you can just go for entertainment, things like that. And, Central and most universities have an entire list of registered student organizations that cover a wide range of things. There's one about the squirrels on campus.
Yep, a whole group.
There's a whole group for that, And so it's absolutely amazing. And I advise the Communication Association here, which is much like the club that I was part of at Michigan State. And part of the reason why I advise it, because it was so important to me transferring and feeling a part of Michigan State, and so much so that I stayed there for graduate school, and that Michigan State very much feels like a home to me. And one of the things is, as I talked about, it takes a while to feel like it's a home. It will. It's just not going to feel like it perhaps yet. For some people, it might be immediately setting, boots on the ground. You're all in, right?
Yep.
Other people, it might take a while. It talks about extracurricular activities, Greek life, intramural sports, whatever might be meaningful
floats your boat.
and rewarding.
Just try it.
Yep. And then this might be something that you're interested in. Dr. Cohen talks about any opportunities, consider the opportunities to assume leadership roles in clubs and activities to experience a sense of real contribution, right?
Yeah, I absolutely applaud that suggestion as someone who works in a leadership institute, and know that you don't have to have a positional title in order to be a leader. We teach that all students have leadership capacity, whether you were a leader in your high school clubs or on your high school sports teams, or you just floated along and then you ended up at college without some direct leadership experience. You can learn those things. Leadership can be learned. And so absolutely taking on those roles is so critical. And we depend as an institution on students doing that stuff. We want to hear from student voices. We want to see what change you can make because your ideas are valid and important. And so we encourage that and we'll teach you how to do it. So come on over. But it is really important for you to feel like you've contributed back to your community. Certainly by the time you're a junior, you should really be seeking out that opportunity in your club to really contribute back and find those roles to do that.
And, first-year students might not be thinking about it. Transfer students might be, but it's something to be on the radar is that also all these experiences you're having are helping you ready to make connections for internships and interviews or put things on the resume of the experiences that you've had. And one of the things that I really have noticed at the universities I'm at is the students who are more hands-on and involved have a lot more that they can put on their resumes when they are seeking out internships or for work and careers after they graduate.
Absolutely.
And so, I know first-year students are like, first I need to be able to find where my classes are. And I get that.
It's true.
But it's something like not to sleep on.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like,
don't
it's
wait
part
for
of the
this
whole
to
process.
come. It is part of the process. And don't wait for that to come to you. You're going to have to seek it out. You have to be purposeful about planning your 4 years or 5 years or 6 years, whatever it takes.
I was 6 years.
It's fine. That's fine. You graduated.
Yeah.
You're good.
I'm good.
Just make sure that you are being purposeful and intentional about what you continue to participate in. And I said, go to as many clubs as you can, which is still true, but don't do that through your senior year. You should really be at some point narrowing down, getting more involved, increasing that depth, increasing that intimacy with the group, and really thinking about it. And we are very specific at CMU about tailoring our experiences to some very specific leadership learning outcomes. And I would be remiss not to say those things out loud. So, we really want students to learn about themselves, go through that identity development stuff, teach them how to form healthy relationships, how can they have socially responsible leadership. So we really are trying to move students through this continuum of leadership learning through their involvement. And it's really key to be specific about what you want to learn from those things.
And I think sometimes that students or just people in general, as you're going through life, that there are things that you might experience or additional assistance that you might need from whatever might be going on. And so there's also a lot of resources on campus that are here to help, including a counseling center that, as people are trying to figure out who they are, that there's a lot of resources on campus to help with academic success, advisors, success coaches, tutors, writing centers. But then there's also the support services for like LGBTQ. We have the office on campus helping individuals there. There are different multicultural programs. And so there are things that are going on that it's not just about what can I do to think of myself, like I've made this friendship connection, but it also is I'm still working through this other thing, or academics have fallen to the wayside because at Central there's the wayside. Sorry, I made a stupid joke.
Love it. The wayside.
The wayside. Look it up. Okay, Google that.
Or don't.
You're fine. But it's one of those things like, sometimes, you could find the friends, but then you realize that they might not know resources are available. And you mentioned this sort of like finding the people to surround yourself. What did you call it?
So it's my own personal term, but having a success squad, like birds of a feather flock together.
Totally.
And we know that if you're around people who are pushing you to succeed, then you're going to succeed at a higher rate. And finding those mentors, even if it's not someone amazing like Dr. Lucas, who's a professor, or me, this lowly staff member, you can, I'm joking, but someone who can serve as a mentor, and your peers can be a mentor. And we know that having those connections is really key. So find those people, find that success squad who's going to push you and question you and say, why are you doing that? Or who can give you ideas about what to do next. It's really important.
Yeah, which is the next thing on this list. It's like your psychic.
It's almost like I know what I'm doing at my job.
You could have written this article. All right, it says seek out mentors. They can be professors, they can be coaches, but they might be people who seem interesting. I love that. Challenging and supportive, and they can assist you in a lot of different ways. And that you had mentioned, people with a mentor are going to be
and we don't.
That connection.
What we know from educational research is that we don't know who mentors are or what they do. But what we do, which is really funny, we don't know how these things happen. We can't predict that. But what we can predict is three things. One, having a mentor will increase your likelihood of degree completion. And we all want you to walk across the stage. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
It will, at a broader level, having mentors helps broaden participation in STEM, which is those science, technology, engineering, and math fields. And that's great. I'm a liberal arts lady, so
me too.
I hope mentorship helps there too. We just don't have the numbers for it yet. But the thing that I really think is the most key key is finding that mentor is especially relevant for underrepresented genders, minoritized populations, and those people of color. And it really does, mentors have a specific role in reducing inequity in outcomes over the life cycle. So we really want students to find a mentor who looks like them, behaves like them, understands their community. That's why it's crucial that we have representation on college that matches our student population. But, we really do want students to feel like there are people on campus who can mentor them no matter what, because it really does have that social justice angle to it.
Yeah. And I would think that a lot of times students might think that they're bothering the people who could potentially be the mentors, but I'm guessing that the majority of people who work on a campus are student-centered and are here because they want to see you succeed. And I know that's exactly why you and I work here.
It is.
And that's why I go to the Professor and Professionals Pizza every year to talk to 10 new students and be like, I am someone here for you. Like, we just met, but if I can be that person for you, that's great. If it's someone else, that's awesome. But, you know, don't ever assume that you're bothering someone. Now, if you email me at 3 a.m., I'm probably not going to answer, but...
It's true. And I second that. I think the vast majority of folks who work on a campus are here to help and really want to be helpful. We have a saying that our president emeritus used to say, which is, at the end of the day, CMU graduates leaders. But leaders need a leader, right? So we can, and most college faculty, staff, and even upperclassmen students are really excited to help folks. And so just ask. Again, you might not get an immediate response if you're sending it via a Twitter DM. Perhaps there are more appropriate ways to do it, but use those office hours, use the office professional staff to get connected, and don't hesitate.
And as a professor, I would say with office hours, one of the things that I see is that people are uncomfortable coming to them. So I try to describe to my students what office hours are like. You'll see me down the hallway. You can see my door right away. You can hear my music, and you can probably hear my laugh for about a mile. So then you know how to find me. And then I always talk about this idea of feed forward. And I've probably mentioned it before on the podcast, and I don't remember the source off the top of my head. But feed forward is essentially when you're going to walk into someone's office, like maybe knock on the door and say, "Hi, Dr. Lucas, I'm Ellen. I'm in your, gender communication class. Do you have a couple minutes where I can ask you a question?" So not only do I know your name, what class you're in, what you want, and how long it's going to take, I can go, "Ellen, come on in. I have a few minutes. What questions do you have?" And it's a much probably comfortable situation. It's less awkward because a lot of times I don't think students want to know what to do in office hours. Office hours are a time for professors where they are in their office
and expected to meet with students
and during these hours. And so I might have a few students in front of you. So there's you can wait, or you can come back, that sort of thing, or you can email me. We can set up a time. But the idea is that you come with questions. If you don't even know what that question is and you're just like, "I don't know," then just come in and say, I think I'm struggling, but I don't know what's going on. Then say that, right?
Absolutely.
And then it's we'll figure it out through a conversation. And so I think there is a lot of times that office hours that you have to come in with, 4.9 questions and that sort of thing. And that's great. Let's get your questions answered. But even if you're like, "I just don't even know," well, then let's have a conversation and figure out what you can know.
Students really don't know what they're for or how to use them. And so just like when you have this conversation with a new person on your floor about their t-shirt that they're wearing or what's posted on their wall or whatever, just come in and say, "Hey, I really like your class. Thanks for doing it." Even if you just do that, it's a great way to walk in the door, because it is a little intimidating to walk down these great big hallways and past other professors' doors, and you're not sure what to happen. But given some context about who you are and why you're walking into the door is so key, because it breaks down the barrier of, does this professor have 600 students in their class? Do they remember me? Do they know who I am? And so just offer that up, and then, give them something to engage with you about.
And I always have, look around your surroundings. I have stuff everywhere in my office that is...
Confirmed.
She's sitting in it now.
It's great. I love it.
There's stuff everywhere. There's different knickknacks that I have, and I have stuff on the walls and things like that. That could also be "Oh, I noticed it." Sorry, this is the first thing I thought of. "I noticed you have a picture of a sailboat. Do you like to sail?"
What? Can you pull the giblets? I don't know anything about sailboats. That's what I just made up.
I don't know either.
But I noticed things when I walked in. And so, because I have a love of many of the things on these walls. So it was really fun to see all the Snow White stuff and the Wizard of Oz. And so for me, that's easy play.
And then there's also the sign that's on the front. Wait, right here, Ellen. Right there.
Ask me about my cats. Love it.
Easy.
Love it.
Done. Just be like, tell me about your cats. Well, Rooney. Ferguson's a producer of the podcast. But the thing is that there's a lot going on campus, and so students should also consider self-care. But a lot of times these are things that are offered on campus, like workout places or different workshops or other fun things like going to see a comedian can have self-care. Or you can think about things that you can do with other people, and that could be studying together. There could be like going to a yoga class together. There's lots of different things that you can do. But I think in college, one of the things that I think you have alluded to by going to all the different extracurricular activities that exist on campus is really finding your passion and then following it. Because, if you are enjoying what you're doing and you're enthusiastic about what you're doing, then it's going to be a lot more fun to do. And that might lead into self-care, and it might lead into relationships. And it's one of those things that it's like, it might all work itself out. And there might be ebbs and flows, like midterms week or finals week or different things, or something happened back at home, or something's happening on campus, or something's happening in the world, and things might just feel a little weird.
Yeah, but it does help to have sort of that long-term goal out in front. What's your vision? What are you going to do? And just a quick plug from the Leadership Institute. We have 3 programs for students that would actually help you kind of get to that point. Yeah. So if you're a brand new student, we absolutely recommend Spark, and the registration for that is open. So sign up today. But it really does help you take your leadership to the next level. Who am I? How do I show up as a leader? How do I show up as a friend in a group? How do I do that? It's wonderful. And then we have Purpose in November. So that program is really about who am I? What are my values? What can I do in the world? And it helps you kind of distill, am I in the right career path?
Yes,
am I in the right classes? Maybe I need to change majors. But it really is about what values and vision do I have so that I can continue to work on that. And then obviously, Dr. Lucas and I are big fans of Leadership. We were both cluster facilitators, and that is for a more advanced student who really wants to dig in on how they're going to change the world. And so what am I here for? What am I on the planet to do? And so having that helps.
I think students can come in a lot of times, they don't know what major they want, or they change their major and they're trying to figure out. And much like loneliness, they are normal feelings that many people have. And
most people change their major.
Yes.
Let's just put that out there. Most people change. It's okay.
Their advisors, their success coaches, the mentors. I have students come in, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I've actually met students for coffee, and Marky, who's a student that we've worked with, and Marky was on the episode Home Base with his best friend Autumn, and he called it a latte laughs. But it is like, so if it's not necessarily something that, some people come in and they know exactly what they want to do, and there's nothing wrong with figuring that out. And most likely your campus probably has something like West Central has in which you can figure it out, or you can go a little bit further and seek out people who might be able to help you with that. But certainly there is lots of ways. And I think that a lot of times people feel like, okay, I'm going to be an accountant, so I'm going to take accounting and then I become an accountant. Right. And I don't necessarily know if our world is like that all the time with all sorts of jobs. And I think it's, I'm a communication major, for example, but I'm also into animals. I love animals. And so that might be a hobby. They might be something that they've done their entire life with animals. Those two things can marry together to become a lifelong career that is full of that passion and excitement they're about. And so a lot of times I think people think hobbies are hobbies. They can turn into careers and things like that as well. Like people can, whether it be politics, I've had a graduate student who was interested in brewing, like beer brewing and that sort of thing, and moving and combining her degrees for that. I had someone who was into soccer and turned it into an internship and then a job in the Major League Soccer.
Yeah, and most campuses will have a career center too, and there are awesome coaches over there who will talk you through all this good stuff. And it is like lots of hobbies turn into visions for changing the world, and so it's exciting.
Can I just do a shout out for Leadership, because I was a facilitator, but I went in with like having something on my mind to think about how I could turn it into the real world, turn it into what they call day 7, where you're doing the action. And it was the podcast. And my year anniversary is coming up in September. And so it's like, I'm living my day 7. I'm doing what students did. And so I know there are people who are loyal listeners who have been out of college for many, many, many years, or didn't go to college and that sort of thing. And so this episode is very specific audience. But I also think there's a lot of things that people can pull from this at any point of life.
Yep.
Moving into a new town.
Oh, been there, done that.
Figuring out what clubs, organizations, what things exist, right? What are you going to do there to be a part of your community, right?
And I just did that in the last year. I moved towns. And I joined the Voters Not Politicians to be a volunteer because I like civics and I was a big political nerd. So, and that's where I met new people in my neighborhood. I get to knock on doors literally of my neighbors. Say hi, vote yes on 2. And, it's been exciting, but it is relevant no matter where you are in your life cycle to continuously do this work. Because again, people aren't going to come show up to your house and be your friend. You have to
unless
find
they're
them.
you knocking on the door.
It's me. If you
knocking on the door.
live in mid-Michigan and get a knock, please answer. It's
Ellen.
just
She's
me.
Very kind. You'll enjoy talking
I'll smile. Does that help?
She has a beautiful smile, so there you go. But I think that's one of the things is that this is massively helpful to students transitioning, whether they're first-year students or transfer students. But
or seniors about to graduate, too.
Yes, exactly. Thinking about what you're going to do, or you're going into high school. Like, I just saw the movie 8th Grade, and to me, it meant so much. It's about the last week of 8th grade of a student who's really struggling to find their place in the world. And she is alone, and she's feeling lonely. So she's both of those things. And she is trying to make YouTube videos to talk about like giving advice to people, but essentially it feels like advice she should take herself, and she's just does all these things that are super brave, and it's awkward and uncomfortable and cringeworthy, and you laugh and you cry and you're mad and you're happy. It's just one of these really wonderful movies that was written and directed by Bo Burnham, and it was absolutely wonderful. And I suggest anyone who has children who are going to be teenagers, people who are teachers, people should,
broadly speaking.
Yes. It's just one of those things about going back to that, having that basic need in life and feeling included and being part of a group. And how do you do it when you're quiet or don't feel like you fit in, or you don't know how to fit in with a certain group of people. And so I feel like although we are specifically talking about what we know, given our careers, right? And where we're at, that this is something that, 6th graders are walking into middle school for the first time. There's 9th graders walking into high school for the first time. There are first-year students walking into college. There are faculty on our campus now who are in the training, right? And making a place and a home for them and themselves and for their family. There are people who are moving across country.
New jobs,
new life. There's so many things. So it's one of those things that maybe this is the biggest transition, where it seems like there's the most resources, the most free time, a lot of development happening with the freedom of being your own person and individual. And so it seems really critical to talk about now. But if you learn it now, then it's something that you can do again. And maybe it's something that, and we've talked about this, is there some way where we can help people become friends, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's something that can start in the middle schools, it can start in the high schools, it can be on college. And maybe that's a way that Ellen and I can give back to the community. We're raising the roof right now. You can't see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And someday maybe you'll be the person who moves into the assisted living facility and you're running the programs, or you're joining the retirement community and you're making friends. And it is a life skill, and that sort of friendship as leadership skills where you're saying, hey, look, I can solve this problem and we can be buddies. Like we can do that. I think it's just really cool. It is absolutely a life skill.
Yeah. And we, Ellen and I have talked off microphone.
Off the record,
but just talking about things like, because there is such a important life skill and friendship and but also just that human connection with other people. Like, what can we do so that people can have the space and the skills in which to be able to make those friendships? So perhaps this is, and you can agree or disagree, this might be a moment of stay tuned on what
I hope so.
Ellen and Alysa can do.
Yes, that would be great. Let's do it.
Yes. But the last thing that I wanted to point out, because I think this is critical for everyone, and it certainly is when thinking about what we spend a lot of our time doing. And so the last point that Dr. Cohen in the Psychology Today article mentions is commit to turning off your phone at least an hour every day. And I think one of the things that we see is that we're on social media all the time. And of course, people are going to post the positive stuff. I mean, some people are complainers online, or they're what we call vague bookers, and they just write, ugh, and you're like, I don't know what that means. But a lot of times it's the fun moments in life, or the accomplishments, or
it's the highlight reel.
It's the highlight reel. It is literally at the end of a football season. Here's that one-handed catch that Tyler Conklin made against Oklahoma State, and it's amazing.
We're still hanging on to it, Tyler. We're hanging on.
Well, Tyler has now moved on to the Minnesota Vikings, and I was just there.
But we're still excited to see CMU.
We are, but it's also exciting to see.
Go Vikings.
Yeah, I can start wearing purple shirts.
Oh,
for purple shirt friends. But it's one of those things that, we see these highlights, but we don't see the times that Tyler dropped the ball, for example, which I'm sure he's really excited about us talking about. Sorry, Tyler. But it's one of those things, like, there are so many times where we fall, or we're not having good days, and a lot of times we don't post those things unless maybe it's with friends specifically, or with a counselor or therapist, or in a specific group, like a secret group on Facebook or something like that, or a support group online. And so that's one of the things, is that we have to consider that not everything that we're seeing is accurate.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean that people aren't doing things or aren't happy in some ways, but we also have to remember people don't always post their bad moments. And so there can be a lot of, what do they call it? FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
There's also, it can be envy or social comparison. We can feel bad about ourselves, that sort of thing, because we're not doing these things, or people seem more popular. And it's more of like a perceived thing.
Yeah, and that comparison is the thief of joy is so real. So, like, give yourself a break from it, you know, get out, see something else, or at least just turn it off for a hot minute, because you're not firing up the app to say you're having a mediocre kind of day. And neither is anyone else. So
they're probably firing it up and looking at everyone else. Look at what everyone else is doing.
Everyone else got vacation. Oh, just not me, huh? But trust me. Not just you.
Not just you. So that's like, it's kind of like, you do you is one of my sayings, like hashtag you do you, which is like, figure out what you're excited about and figure out who your people are, your success squad, and do that. And it doesn't matter if it's not someone else's thing, that's fine, right? Like, but the other part of it is, it's not only you, right? No. The feelings that you have are other feelings that people are having. And because of that, there are so many resources available. There's lots of conversations to be had. There's a lot of connections to be made. And so to me, this is one of the most exciting times of the year, because there's so much that is yet to come.
Yeah, I feel like we should do the New Year's fireworks like in August instead of in January, because I've lived on this academic calendar basically my whole life. And so the new year means nothing to me because we just come back into the same work. So I always want to do fireworks in August instead of in January.
And it seems like a great time to take a look at if you are the sort of person who does resolutions. Maybe it's not resolutions. Maybe it's thinking about what goals you have, how you might go about doing things like studying, or even myself, like time blocking to be more productive in the new school year. Maybe it's revisiting the bucket list. So it's revisiting your look forward to. So it's not just focusing on academics or work, that it's focusing on things that you love to do, your passions, and then finding the people and looking forward to doing those things. So.
Absolutely.
So I think this is an important conversation to have. I'm so glad that we have made this connection.
Yay!
And
thanks, Leadership.
Well, actually, no.
Go way back.
Go way back. Okay, so usually I do the friendship origin story at the beginning.
That's true.
We're doing it at the end.
I'm ready.
Because we actually met at an event on Central's campus called Finals Focus.
That's true. Thank you, Jen Nottingham. That's our connection.
That's our connection. Right. So we both signed up. And what it was to be there for students during finals and handing out snacks and just doing all these contests and
Late
stuff.
night, hanging out.
It was in our, what was called the University Center, which is our union type situation on Central's campus. And so we just hung out, and that's how we met.
That's
and then
true.
I would say we got to know each other better at leadership and that sort of thing. But it's one of those things, like, you and I were both doing something to get out there for students and probably for ourselves and be a part of the community. And look at this. And
here we are.
We're friends a few years later, a couple years later, at least.
Yeah, at least 2 or 3, something like that. But that's true. We love students. And so that's how this happened.
And so you just never know what a connection can lead to.
It's true.
So thank you so much, Ellen. I appreciate your time. And
so fun.
And I can't wait for our Stay Tuned to become something that we can share.
Yeah, I'm super stoked. It's going to be great.
And I hope you have a good academic year.
Oh, thank you. Happy New Year. Fireworks to you.
Happy New Year. I love it. So a few weeks back, Ellen and I met for lunch and started talking about student success and friendship. The statistic she told me about having one connection make students 60% more likely to graduate really stuck with me. That is an amazing statistic. It is important as humans to make connections, to find your people, to find support in the things that you want to do, and it seems like friendship is particularly critical here. Our first step was to record this episode, but we want to further talk about friendship as a skill that can help young people on campuses and beyond. What skills are needed? How can they be applied to friendship? How can those friendship skills help them be happy, healthy, and safe? And how about we add one more? Successful. So this topic is definitely in the started category, and it is in progress. So we'll record more as we develop ideas for programs that can help students make friends and connections, because it seems this particular time period is particularly critical, and if they develop these skills during this time, it can be something that can be applied throughout life. And now Ellen and I are focusing on college, but we might be able to look to high school, middle school, and elementary school. If you like what you have in your ear holes, there's a few things you can do. I'd love to have you follow Best Forevers on social media. You can find the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Best Forevers Pod, and I'm at Dr. Alysa Lucas on Twitter. Social media is a great way to follow podcast updates and to get involved with discussions and other items related to friendship. I like to post articles, ask questions, and get everyone really involved in thinking about the movement to love on our friends more. So I look forward to us all connecting online. If you care about friendships like I do and want to support Best Forevers, you might consider supporting the movement to love on our friends more on patreon.com/bestforeverspod. There's lots of cool perks and goals. You'll want to check it out. I would love to call you friends with benefits. And thank you to all of my lovely patrons for all the support. And as I begin my 1-year anniversary month this September, I'll start to talk more about the buddy benches and how you can all help. So come join me at Best Forevers on Patreon. There's lots of cool things that are going to happen. And trust me, I love hearing all of your stories, and I want to hear about student success stories. I want to hear about stories of transitioning to college. I want to hear about college friendships. I want to hear it all. If you've got a story about friendship, please share them with me. You can email them to me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com, or you can go to bestforeverspod.com/surveys and fill out one of the surveys that already exists. There's lots of different topics, and it's not so much a survey as it is a space for you to write, and then it comes directly to me in my email so that I can check out your friendship stories. And then I can share them on a future episode of Best Forevers. Finally, thanks for listening to Best Forevers. I appreciate every single listen, like, follow, post, and retweet. Please subscribe, rate, and review Best Forevers. It is so helpful to the podcast to getting out there so that other people can learn about Best Forevers. And of course, it warms my friendship-loving heart. And if you have friends and you enjoy the podcast, feel free to recommend it to a friend, right? Word of mouth is awesome. That is something that friends can do. This week's promo is from Nikki and Rosanna of 6 Degrees of Wiki, a podcast with a super cool premise. So check this out. It's a podcast where 2 sisters find the 6 degrees of separation between what seems to be unrelated Wikipedia articles with 6 rounds of exciting and often ridiculous predictions. When I worked at the movie theater in high school, I used to love to play 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, and this podcast is way more fun, ridiculous, and, strangely enough, informative. So take a break from work and school and to have fun and listen. But be sure to subscribe, rate, and review 6 Degrees of Wiki. So until next time, consider what you can do to put yourself out there to make friends or to make it easier for others to connect with you. Because without our friends, who would we be? Oh, and Happy New Year.
Hi, this is Nikki.
And Rosanna.
Do you like trivia, quiz shows, learning new things about history, science, and pop culture?
We host a podcast called 6 Degrees of Wiki that has all that.
During each 30-minute episode, one sister leads the other down an exciting Wikipedia spiral to find the 6 degrees of separation between two seemingly unrelated Wikipedia articles.
The other sister attempts to guess what the next degree is during every round.
And she's usually wrong.
Hey!
So listen to find out whether or not the Loch Ness Monster is real.
You can also pick up 10,000 years of English history in just 4 minutes.
Here's an interesting fact. People that listen to our podcast are 85% more likely to beat their friends and family at Jeopardy and sound smart at parties.
Is that true?
Sure it is. So get in on that sweet, sweet brainy action and listen to 6 Degrees of Wiki every Monday.